Romans 8, beginning at verse 5. For those who are according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh, but those who are according to the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. For the mind set on the flesh is death, but the mind set on the Spirit is life and peace. Because the mind set on the flesh is hostile toward God, for it does not subject itself to the law of God, for it is not even able to do so. And those who are in the flesh cannot please God. Our God word, our theological term that helps us understand the fellowship into which God has called us, is flesh. In its most simplest form, the word flesh simply means our bodies. But it's not often used in that sense, and particularly not in that sense in this passage from Romans 8. So let's talk about this word a little bit, the word flesh. It's not always a negative term. It is here in Romans 8. It's the same word that we find when God says that in marriage, the two are joined together and become one flesh. And so we understand that that is the Greek translation from the Hebrew that we read way back in the creation account, that when God brought the woman to the man, he commanded and he declared that they would be united, and that their physical union would bring about a oneness in them that was unique, but that it was a physical oneness, that they would become one flesh. And it's more than just a physical oneness, but it is that as well. And so when the New Testament then, using the New Testament language, uses this term there, it's a positive term. It's a term that simply indicates the created order and God's design for marriage, and that this union between the husband and the wife is incredibly deep, so that they are actually the two becoming one, and the word that is applied to that is one flesh. And so flesh in that sense is maybe it's really a neutral term. It's not. I mean, it just is what it is. It's our bodies uniting, and that there's a oneness that's created in that union that is unique to that relationship. Here in Romans chapter 8, the term flesh is not a positive term from the fellowship perspective, the perspective of the fellowship into which God calls us. And it really is more than just about our bodies, but it does involve our bodies in that when we do that which is contrary to God's will for us, it is often something that we do physically in our bodies. And so the term then is applied here in Romans chapter 8 as a reference to everything that we do that is outside of God's will. It's really encapsulated in selfishness, that we want to be in control of our own lives, that we want to make our own rules, that we want to be able to do whatever we want to do. And notice that it's a do thing, and there's also a think thing there. But what we find is that what the things that we do because of the way that we think. I often said to my students back when I was in the classroom, whenever they would speak a word that was not acceptable in my classroom, that those words come out of us as a reflection of what is inside of us. And so the act of speaking, and that's a physical act. It's air coming through our vocal cords, our brain making our vocal cords and our tongue and our mouth do those things that shape the sounds that come out. And so there is a physical act that results as we choose to say words. This also extends to all the other things that we do in our fellowship with God and with each other. Worshipping false gods, worshipping other gods, putting things in authority over God in our lives. And then all the things that we do with each other that we read in the commandments are things that destroy our relationships. When we don't honor our parents, when we don't honor the life that God gave us, and we deliberately either take life or don't protect life. When we don't respect the institution of marriage and have sexual relations outside of marriage, of a man and a woman according to the biblical principles for marriage. When we steal, when we gossip, when we lie, when we betray, when we don't think well of others and it comes out in how we treat them. When we, I guess the last commandments are really attitude things, but they lead to actions. When we desire the things that belong to others to the extent where we figure out a way to get them, whether it's the reputation of another or the spouse of another or the belongings of another. And so there is physical action tied in. And so we take this word, flesh, which is our meat, our muscles, our bones, our organs, our blood vessels, our skin, all of that. That's our flesh. But we're using the word flesh here as that which is internal and comes out of us that is contrary to God. And what we find in the application of this principle is that when we live according to our own desires, when we live according to those things that we want to do or want to think, apart from what God has given to us, recognizing, as we saw previously with the word law, that law is good, that God's law is good for us, and that He gave us His law to protect us and to keep us safe, that it is a good thing that we, because we are focused on ourselves and doing our own thing, our flesh is the word that's used there, cannot even do what God calls us to do. And so then as we look at the whole principle, we see that God must act for us. We cannot choose God. God chooses us and gives us the gift of faith. And He gives us the ability to apply the gift of faith. Not because we deserve it, not because we do anything, not because we can reason ourselves into fellowship with God, but because He desires, and because of His love and His mercy and His grace, He extends to us the gift of faith. That then He empowers us to apply, to trust that His promises are true. And so as we consider this term, flesh, we're understanding it here in Romans chapter 8, anything as a negative. That which holds us apart from God as we live in rebellion against Him, as we fail to trust Him, as we want to do our own thing. And that what we need is for our flesh, our old nature, we could say, that selfish desire to be put to death. And a new nature given to us that loves God and wants to be in obedience to God, that recognizes that God's law is good. We have to consider there that we don't twist things again and that we don't obey in order for God to bring us into fellowship. But that loving God's law is simply a character trait, a characteristic of being in fellowship with God. The fellowship that he establishes with us now, and a fellowship that will extend for all eternity. So, flesh. It's our bodies, but applied here in a metaphorical sense. That which is in rebellion against God, that cannot even choose to do what God wants us to do. And so we're thankful that God acts on our behalf and brings us into fellowship. Thank you for being a part of the conversation. God bless you.